So today I'll be continuing with my college football game by game prediction and roster discussion videos. Today I'll be doing the Florida Gators. So in 2025, Billy Napier had the 10th ranked recruiting class in the country, and Florida returns at 66% of their production, which is a lot. It ranks at 18th in the country. And Florida, I'm not high on them at all this year, though. I'll just go ahead and tell you. I don't think they're going to be a terrible team, but I don't think they're going to be a good team at all. Now, Athlon, which is considered to be a very accurate college football magazine, is very high on Florida and has them ranked 11th in the country. And while that seems pretty crazy to me, maybe I am wrong on them. But Florida's obviously not a good program right now in football, but they're not hopeless to where they couldn't be turned back around into a good football program. But I just don't think Billy Napier is the coach to do it. And starting on the offensive side of the roster, they were okay here last year, but not good. Napier is calling the plays himself on offense, and he's obviously not doing that good of a job at it. And I think they'll be okay on offense again, but not great. So DJ Lagway will be the quarterback, a five-star quarterback who was one of the top recruits of the 2024 recruiting class. And as a true freshman last year, he played in 12 games, every game except the Texas game. And he started 7 games, including Florida's two big wins over LSU and Ole Miss. And Lagway threw the football 192 times last year and completed 115 of those passes, which was 59.9%, which is okay, but not good. And his 12 to 9 touchdown interception ratio, though, is terrible. That needs to get better. But he did average a very impressive 10 yards per throw. And Lagway is considered to be a dual threat quarterback, but that wasn't really seen of him last year. He ran 50 times for only 101 yards, so he averaged only 2 yards a carry, and he didn't have any rushing touchdowns. I think he'll be solid at least for Florida at quarterback this year, but I haven't seen enough good plays from him to where I can just assume that he's going to be a superstar yet. So at wide receiver, I really like Eugene Wilson. He only played in 4 games last year because of an injury. In that, he had 19 catches for 266 and a touchdown, averaging 14 yards a catch. But in 2023, he was one of the best freshman wide receivers with 61 catches for 538 and 6 touchdowns. And he's a very speedy slot wide receiver that I no doubt think has an NFL future. But he's going to need some help this year, and I'm not convinced that Florida has much help for him at the wide receiver position. And at running back, they've got two pretty good running backs, Jaden Ball and Jacoby Jackson. Ball last year had 673 on 133 carries and 7 touchdowns, averaging 5.1 a carry. And Jackson had 95 carries for 509 and 7 touchdowns, averaging 5.4 a carry. And on the offensive line, Florida returns 4 out of 5 starters, including two really good players. Jake Slaughter at center, who is for sure a top 5 center in the country. He allowed only 8 total pressures and 1 sack. last season, and left tackle Austin Barber, who only allowed 2 sacks and 5 total pressures last season. But you do have to remember that Florida's offensive line was solid last year, but it was not great. And on the defensive side, they were solid here last year, but not great. And I think that's how they'll be again. Their defensive line returns 3 good players. Tyreek Sapp, who's probably their best defensive player, who had last year 47 tackles and 7 sacks and 26 total quarterback pressures and 2 forced fumbles. And they've got George Gums, who had last year 35 tackles and 5 sacks and 26 total quarterback pressures and 2 pass breakups. And they've got Caleb Banks, who played in 12 games last year and had 21 tackles and 4.5 sacks and 29 total quarterback pressures and 2 forced fumbles and a pass breakup. And at linebacker, though, it's questionable because they lose pretty much everybody, including their best linebacker, Shamar James. And at cornerback, they're questionable here too because they lose both starting corners and didn't really do anything in the portal to help with that. Now, at safety, they return both starters, including Jordan Castell, who's one of the SEC's best safeties. He's a third year starter at Florida, and last year he had 55 tackles and 9 pass breakups and a sack. So now for the game-by-game predictions. Florida's first 2 games against LIU and South Florida will be blowout wins. LIU will be like an name your score kind of game for Florida. They'll be able to put their second string in for the whole second half. And South Florida may be good enough to challenge them for a half. But Florida, I think, will pull away in the third quarter. And by the start of the fourth quarter, they'll be able to put their second string. And now on the road at LSU. So I'm really high on LSU this year, and the magazines are too. At least 2 of them are. Athlon has them number 7, and Lindy's has them number 5. And if Florida's gonna win this game, their defensive line is gonna have to control the game like it did when they played last year. But I don't think that will happen with the game being at LSU. I think LSU will play better, and I don't think Florida's going to be able to stop Nussmeier. And LSU's front 7, I think, can slow down Florida's run game to where I don't think Florida will score very much in this. When LSU's 2 starting linebackers, Whit Weeks and Harold Perkins, I wouldn't say make the best linebacker unit in the country because they're not very deep at linebacker, but they're probably the best linebacker combination in the country. I think that LSU will win this game by around 10 points. I think it'll be close going into the fourth quarter, but LSU will pull away late. So now on the road at Miami. So this was a 41-17 blowout win for Miami last year. I think it'll be closer than it was last year. I think Florida will score a little bit more, but I do think Florida's going to have a hard time stopping Carson Beck, and Miami's offensive line can handle Florida's defensive line. I think, and I think Miami will be able to run the football some and be balanced on offense and win this game. So now at Texas, this was a huge blowout last year. I do think that Texas's defensive line is better than Florida's offensive line, and they'll be able to slow down Florida's run game and get some pressure on lag way. And Texas, their offensive line, if it does take a step back, like I think it will, Florida may be able to stop Texas's run game better than they were able to do last year. But I don't think Florida is going to be able to throw much in this game with Texas's elite secondary and them not being loaded at wide receiver. And I don't think that Florida is going to be able to slow down Texas's passing attack. I think Texas will win this one fairly easily. So now on the road at Texas A&M. So last season, Texas A&M's quarterback Marcel Reed made his first ever college start on the road at Florida, and A&M didn't just win; they had it pretty much over with at halftime. And now Texas A&M gets the game at home, and I think that makes a big difference in this one. And Texas A&M has even more coming back this year than Florida does. They've got one of the best offensive lines in the country, and their defense is better than Florida's is, I think. And Elko, I think, is a much better coach than Napier is. So I've got to go with Texas A&M to get this win. So now Mississippi State. I think that Florida will win this game pretty easily because of the line of scrimmage. Mississippi State, I think, is going to be terrible again at the line of scrimmage. And while Florida's not one of the best in the country at the line of scrimmage, they're much better than Mississippi State is. So now Georgia. So Georgia may not have the big line of scrimmage advantage over Florida that they've had the last several years because Florida returns so much on both lines of scrimmage, and Georgia loses four players on each side of the line of scrimmage. And Georgia may not have a quarterback advantage like they've had the last several years either against Florida because they lose Carson Beck. But the rest of the defense, the linebackers and the secondary, Georgia's way better than Florida. And Georgia's running back room is just as good as Florida's is, I think. And I do think that this game will be close well into the fourth quarter. But Georgia's wide receiver room, I think, is going to be the best it's been in a while with the transfers they brought in. I think it'll make a difference. And I think that Georgia will pull away late and win by about two touchdowns. So at this point, I think Florida will have decided to get rid of Billy Napier, even if they decide to let him coach the rest of the year, unless they get so impressed with him only losing to Georgia by two touchdowns again, like they did last year, and decide to keep him. But now on the road at Kentucky, so you can pretty much trust that Mark Stoops will have Kentucky good at the line of scrimmage, even though they do lose a lot on both sides. And the rest of the defense, Kentucky may be a little bit better than Florida but Florida's got a better quarterback than Kentucky does. And Kentucky doesn't even have a receiver like Eugene Wilson to throw to, and Florida's got a better running back room. I think this one will be pretty close, but I'm going with Florida to get the win on the road. So now on the road at Ole Miss. So Florida's offensive line may be a little bit better than Ole Miss's. So they will probably be able to run some in this game, and their defensive line may be a little bit better than Ole Miss's too. But Ole Miss has much better linebackers than Florida does, and neither team I think is going to be good in the secondary. And I think though that Ole Miss can take advantage of that more than Florida can with Lane Kiffin coaching and their loaded wide receiver room. I think this one will be close, but with the game being at Ole Miss and it being a revenge game for Ole Miss, I have a feeling Ole Miss will get this win. So now Florida at this point will have had a very disappointing season. And if they decide to just quit at this point, then Tennessee will beat them. But I don't think they will quit because at this point they will still have a chance to make a bowl game if they can win these last two games. And I think they'll be very motivated for this game. And the game is at Florida. And you know the history of this game when it's been at Florida, and Josh Heupel has struggled a lot on the road since he's been at Tennessee. I think this will be close, but I'm going to go with Florida to get the win. So now Florida State, a team that pretty much redid their roster and the transfer portal because the coach there can't recruit or develop players. So this game was 31 to 13 last year for Florida, and I think the game will be closer this year. I'm not high at all on Florida State either, though they bring in Castellanos from Boston College to play quarterback, and I think Lagway's a better quarterback than him, and I think Florida's got a clear advantage at the line of scrimmage on both sides over Florida State. I think Florida gets this win, and they get back to a bowl game at 6-6 overall and 3-5 in the conference. So that will be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.